Hello and welcome to a special session from the Interpreting Your Genetics Summit. I'm your host, James Maskell, and I have a special treat for you here today. I thought that it would probably be useful for people to see what it actually looks like to have your genetic information to interpreted by someone who knows it inside out. So it's my great pleasure to welcome a keynote from the Interpreting Your Genetics Summit. She's a friend. She's also deeply connected to the test that we're going to go through. I decided to do my test through DNA Life. They are one of the sponsors of the summit. One of the reasons why I chose them is because they only sell through practitioners, and therefore you do get all of your information interpreted, not like some of the consumer-driven tests. And so it's a warm welcome to Dr. Yael Joffe. Welcome, Doc.
Thanks, James. Excited to be here and looking forward to taking you through some of your genes and seeing how they play out.
So just so we're clear with everyone at home, we haven't tried this at home. I don't know anything that's about to happen. I don't know any of the information that you're going to share. So let's just do it kind of like we would if I was a patient. I know we don't have exactly the same amount of time, but let's just go where we want to go.
Great. So we're gonna jump straight in. Just two caveats. The one is that if you were a patient in my clinic, we would do obviously a full 1 hour assessment. So I'd know a whole lot more about you than I currently do. And obviously in the advice that I'm giving you, I would obviously be asking a whole lot of more questions, and usually a feedback would be about an hour and a half, but that's okay. We're going to pick up some nice little gems about what we've come across in your genes. And rather than go through each and every gene, because of our time constraints, I'm really just going to pick up some really key messaging and some key things that I want you to know. And obviously, I'm going to ask you some key questions. So we're going to jump in. And before I do, I just want to understand a little bit. Most times when someone has a genetic test, there's usually a reason. So it could be there's a family history, some concerns, it might be your weight, but there's usually a driver. So before we launch into the results, I wonder if you could just share with me what would have been your reason, aside from sharing on the summit, of why you would want to know this information?
So a couple of things. So one is the only grandparent I ever knew had Alzheimer's, and I've been sort of aware of the fact that there is some family history there. As far as my own health, I've always been sort of generally healthy. Possibly overweight. Most of my life I'm sort of moving towards not being as overweight as I used to be when I was like 20 or 21, and getting healthier slowly. But I think there's more to do there. I do have one health issue, which is a little bit embarrassing because it's the laziest of all the diseases, which is gout. So I come from a family of South African wine merchants. My grandfather owned Crook Constantia, and they operated that for a number of years. So my uncle's a wine merchant for a while, and so I'm hoping that it's an epigenetic thing, but I am looking to find out what's going on because I eat relatively healthy, exercise. I live the lifestyle of the functional medicine community, and it's just happening more than it should, and I really want to sort of try and understand what's going on there. So and also I want I feel as though most men particularly don't feel an urgency to do any sort of lifestyle changes until something goes drastically wrong. Yeah. So here I am, a man without anything really drastically wrong. The foot is annoying, honestly, but I would just love to sort of get a little bit ahead of the fact. And if I've got some weird Alzheimer's-y stuff, I got to get into it, and I got to start taking responsibility because I'm 36. So that's why I'm here.
Wonderful. That's really helpful. So let's just start off by just putting one thing aside. You have no weird Alzheimer's stuff, so that's great.
Okay.
That's really good. Let's get that out the way. So there's the gene ApoE, which is a very well-known gene, and as we kind of heard about at the IFM conference a few months ago, we spoke about this E4 allele as being kind of one of the genes that we keep as a marker for potential cognitive decline in Alzheimer's. So the awesome story is that, and is that you don't have it. You have the E33 genotype, so it's one of the markers you don't have, and that's really cool. So you can park that. It might have been that someone in your hereditary had it, but it looks like it hasn't been passed down.
Okay.
So that's a really nice start. I have some other good stuff for you as well.
So let's get into that. I know you sent me, so I went through the DNA Life test, and it looks like I've got quite a few different reports. Which one do you want to start with? Because I can pull it up on the screen.
Sure. I want to start with DNA health. Okay. I always start with DNA health. The reason being is DNA health really looks at your core cellular processes. So it gets down into really what functional medicine is about, which is inflammation, detoxification, oxidative stress. It's really the stuff that we really want to know about before we start looking at the details. So that's why we're going to start with DNA health. And if you look at the way DNA health is done, you'll see at the top, it starts off with a whole lot of genes under lipid metabolism, and then it'll go through methylation, it'll go through inflammation, it'll go through detoxification. I've obviously had a chance to go through your genes, so I'm going to fly past the genes that really don't have a significant impact. I will bring to your attention when there's a great result, as in, this is really good because we're not seeing anything here. So in lipid metabolism, I've already mentioned.
Which page are we on?
Sorry?
Metabolism, which page are we on? Can you see the screen?
So, yeah, I'm okay. I'll look at your screen instead of mine.
Lipid metabolism.
Okay, so lipid metabolism, you can see there ApoE. You can see your result is E33. This is fantastic. It means that the E4 allele, which is kind of an interesting genotype to have, you don't have it. So let's move on. If you can keep on going, and we're going to go into the next panel, which is methylation. If you could stop there. So we know that methylation is a really important process around, and I know it's in the summit. I know Cara Fitzgerald is speaking on it, that around DNA repair, about making new DNA. We talk about methyl donors. It's a really important function. So we're always interested in the genes in this area. Now you can see here that there's a number of genes that we've tested. The most important, or what I call the pop star gene, is the one at the top. You can see it's like 677CT. Out of most of these genes, this is one of the most powerful. And you can see your result where it says a CC, and you can see a white star, which means there's no impact. In other words, you've got no variant in this gene. So that's great. You do have in 1298, but that's not nearly as powerful. And you have what we call a heterozygote. So one variant, one copy in MTRR and CBS. Again, what we want to do is we don't want to pick on a snip and kind of drill down into it. We want to get a sense of your pathway. And so when I look at everything, the only one that really comes to mind for me as a concern is COMT. So COMT is a methylation gene, but it's also a detoxification gene. It impacts hormone metabolism. It impacts neurotransmitters. So what I've done is I've made a note when I was going through your gene about methylation. And I would say that you have a moderate result. It's not a huge result. It's not anything I need to kind of jump up and down and get you on supplementation. But I've made a note of your methylation. And when we get to the end of your test, I'm going to come back and say, these are the key areas. This is what I think you should be doing. Okay. So let's park methylation and move on to the next. Okay. So what's really interesting is the next one's going to be detoxification. And if you look at this is an extraordinary result. This is where you should be dancing up and down.
I'm very excited.
Absolutely no genetic variation in detoxification in the genes that are being tested in DNA Life. And this is extraordinary. I do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these tests, and it's almost always detoxification. And so your result is amazing. And it's something you can really hang your hat on and say, this is great. This is something fantastic to pass down to your kids. So because methylation detox is all about how do we process toxins that enter our body, and obviously toxins and hormones and metabolites that are made by our body. So this is a great result. I want you to move on. Remember, we've got a lot to go through, so I'm going to move very quickly to the next one, which I think is inflammation. If you just scroll down, and again, you're going to see, there you go, a fantastic result. So this test, DNA Life are actually adding more genes in, which are more of the interleukin genes. So the ones we have here are only the ones that are been around for a long time, really well researched. And you can see you also don't have the variation there. So this is two really good outcomes. Detoxification and inflammation are not coming up. Let's move on to the next one where we do have something to look at. So these genes are oxidative stress. And again, there are other genes that are interesting, and I know that DNA Life are adding them, but these are the two main ones for now. And the most important one is the SOD2, often called MSOD, manganese superoxide dismutase, but we sometimes refer to as SOD2. And this is a mitochondrial gene where it's basically kind of the mopping up of free radicals. So how effective are you at being able to manage your oxidative stress? And obviously most oxidative stress will happen in the mitochondria because that's where we generate energy. And you can see you've got a heterozygote. So you've got one copy of SOD2 and one copy of eNOS. And eNOS is a really important gene because it's about nitric oxide. So sometimes when we think of things like blood vessel integrity or blood pressure, it's the eNOS gene. So you've got one copy of each. It's not a hugely dramatic result, but it's definitely worth noting. So the same with methylation. I've made a note in my notebook over here that this is something I want to keep in mind. Okay, let's keep on going.
You look at these individual things. You know, one of the things that I saw as like a theme of the summit was that it's not so much, you know, that the idea of like treating individual SNPs is sort of like fallen away, and more it's about using, you know, this information as with the biomarkers and the other information to sort of get an overall picture of who this human is, rather than going into things directly. Is that about right?
100%. So one of the red flags, if you're in this industry, is when you're seeing tests really trying to hang a hat on a single SNP or try and make a recommendation based on one SNP. If it's these nutrigenomic SNPs, it's really a red flag, you know. So the way we work is we look at the SNPs, we look at the pathway, and then we look at the pathways in context of each other, because we know things like oxidative stress and inflammation are in a self-perpetuating loop. We know that inflammation, detoxification, oxidative stress, they're all interrelated. So we don't want to say, well, let's give you one recommendation of what to do based on detox and one recommendation based on oxidative stress, and that the two aren't related, because we know from functional medicine they're completely interrelated. So that's why I'm kind of going through your report the way I am, is I'm going through the pathways, I'm noting where there are issues, and when I get to the end of it, I'm going to give you an overall picture of how I think they might be connecting with each other. Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love you sharing that, because you know, I think that, you know, one of the goals that I had with the summit is to share exactly what you just said with the world, because I think that most people still have this sort of deterministic idea of genetics. And what I'm hearing from you and what I've heard from people going to these conferences, the genetics conference, you and I were at the the PLMI conference last year, is that this is the new way that people are thinking about genetics. And so I'm glad that you shared that. So let's get back into it here.
Okay, let's get back into it. Let's find something interesting. Okay, so we've got oxidative stress. So this is bone health. It's probably misnamed because actually it's not about bone health, but it's about vitamin D metabolism. So you can see the gene there called VDR, vitamin D receptor gene. Vitamin D receptor gene almost accounts for about 80% of vitamin D metabolism. They're testing for 3 different gene variations, and you can see you've got a heterozygote, so one copy for all 3. So immediately I flagged that, and I want to know, have you tested your vitamin D? Do you know what it is? Do you supplement with vitamin D? So do you? I mean, have you tested vitamin D?
I have in times. I haven't got a recent biomarker, and I'm going to be doing that, probably as part of this, not part of the summit, but ongoing, like just with the beginning of new is going through and doing that. I have taken vitamin D in the past, but I haven't got a level recently, but I will.
Okay, great. So based on this, it would definitely be a flag for me. Remember that the important thing about nutrigenomics is it's not an absolute answer. It's a marker. So it doesn't tell us what your actual metabolite is. It gives us an insight into what we should be investigating. So it's important not to give too much power to these SNPs. They're very insightful, and they act like markers for us. When we're trying to say, well, what should we focus on? What should we test? What should we do? But by themselves, they don't give absolute answers. So that's another kind of caveat around nutrigenomics.
Okay.
Right. There's one last section in the DNA health before we start looking at the DNA. Oh, okay. This is the insulin sensitivity. For me, there's nothing here. PPR gamma, the CC you have, is about 75% of the population. So I tend not to be overreactive to it. You've got one copy of TCF7L2, which I'm actually going to talk about a little bit in DNA Diet. and then nothing in FTO and SLC. So for me, insulin is not an issue for you. Let's just go to the last section, which is a fairly interesting one, this one, where we look at some of the things around food responsiveness. Lactose intolerance, you've got one copy of the LCT gene or the M6. Often we'll see like one copy and it doesn't have a huge impact. So you're probably okay with dairy, I'm guessing. There's some people who have one copy and they can have dairy, they can have some lactose, but maybe not huge loads of lactose. So they might be like, I can drink a cappuccino, but I can't drink a latte. So it's about...
Yeah, I've never really liked drinking milk. Like that's never really something that's appealed to me. But I've, back in the day, I was a breakfast cereal guy before I realized what that was. But yeah, I do prefer like a less milky, like Americano to a latte, for instance.
Yeah. So we often find in those that are heterozygote, who don't have maybe a full-blown lactose intolerance, that as we're seeing in your profile, that they'll generally have worked out to kind of not go the milk route. And this is really obviously about the lactose and not about the casein. The other interesting thing I just want to bring to your attention is does anyone in your family ever had high blood pressure?
I think, I think my mother had it for a while, for a little bit, but she had to work it out a different way because So I mean, that has been something.
And yours is all okay?
It's been okay, yeah.
No, it's just interesting because, we know that about 50% of people respond to salt sensitivity and 50% don't. So what I mean by that is there's some of us, me included, who can eat as much salt as I want, as much sodium, has absolutely no impact on blood pressure. Other people will have high blood pressure and they'll decrease their salt and they'll see an improvement. So there's two genes that we're very interested in, ACE and AGT, and you have one copy of each. So if you had high blood pressure, or in the case of your mother, I'm guessing that salt would have played a role, that there would have been some kind of salt sensitivity. But the reality is, if you don't have high blood pressure, you can just be kind of a normal salt eater, not obviously an over salt eater, but just a moderate salt eater.
Okay.
So that's I was interested. Okay. I'm going to jump onto, before we go into diet, if you don't mind opening the DNA estrogen, there's one gene in here that I want to talk about. That's one. Now just flick down. There wasn't anything here significant. Well, there wasn't mostly same, but if you go down to the bottom, there wasn't anything here that we didn't know about. I don't know, keep on going. So go up into that panel where you saw the result, but there at the bottom, can you see where it says factor 5?
Yeah.
Now, factor 5 is a very interesting gene. And when I saw this, I was like, well, if we have a conversation about one thing, it should have been about this. So factor 5 is in blood clotting and thrombosis has a kind of a cascade where one enzyme kind of generates the next. And there's a whole lot of clotting factors that kind of manage the thrombosis and clotting. And factor 5 is one of them. And factor 5 is one of those where it doesn't have a nutrigenomic input. There isn't a dietary advice I can give you, but there is lifestyle advice. And it's a kind of a strong gene, this one. I don't know if you've ever heard of like the traveler's gene, or, you hear stories about someone who was like super fit, super young, flying back from Australia and had a DVT on the plane coming back, even though they were like super healthy and super young. So often this is factor 5. So, there's some people who've kind of built these traveler genetic tests and they always have factor 5 in. And when I thought of you, I was like, oh my God, you spend your whole life traveling.
Yep.
On long journeys or long flights. This is an absolute marker for you, James. This is like a non-negotiable, right?
Okay, tell me.
So it really is all about long distance travel. So if it's flying or sitting in a car, you have to apply all the precautionary things you can. So it's flying socks, it's moving around, it's doing exercises where you're flying. I don't know if you have a doctor that you work with. If you're working with me, I'm not an MD. I would suggest taking half an aspirin before you fly, before you go on long trips, every single time. The great news is you only have a one copy of factor 5, not a double copy. But it's a little bit stronger than a nutrigenomic SNP.
I've actually noticed sometimes that the gout thing comes on after a long travel. Could you see that that could be, there could be inflammation caused by that?
I'm not gonna take a flyer at that. I would have to think about it,
Okay.
especially with all the smart people who are going to listen to my conversation. I'd rather not throw out an
I've
answer.
noticed that I did start to think, oh, this really comes on when I travel, and I've seen it. Like I had it both times when I've gone to England. I've like had it, and it's kind of embarrassing because there I am trying to do some work event. I'm hobbling around, and I was like, why does this only come in England? Maybe it's I'm not eating like pies and stuff when I'm there the whole time. So what's going on?
Yeah, I think gout obviously is very strong around inflammation and oxidative stress. We know that you have some issues around oxidative stress. Traveling, the pressure is always inflammatory. I mean, that's why your feet swell when you travel. So it's very, very pro-inflammatory, which is one of the dangers of having factor V and having such an inflammatory environment. So there's no surprise whatsoever that your gout would manifest on long trips. But for you, and I would say, this is also something to think about in terms of your family, because this factor V came from somewhere. It was given to you by one of your parents, is that, when we talk about healthy flying and all the precautions we should take, like I've just mentioned, moving around, standing, walking, wearing flying socks, half an aspirin, lots of fluids, you've got to do it. It's like a non-negotiable, because this isn't a chronic disease issue. This is a acute thing.
Okay.
Great.
Awesome. It's already been worth it. So
exactly.
worth it. Thank you.
Exactly. So I was like, if I only tell you one thing, I'm done, right?
Yeah.
But let's, and I'm really glad we found that. I'm really, really glad we found that. That's not something you want to kind of carry with you your whole life and not know. All right. Let's close estrogen and let's open diet, because I want to show you something a little bit interesting in diet.
Okay.
Okay. So we can go to just one page in diet. If you just scroll up, ignore that. You'll see the results. I think it's one page on right. So the way diet has been formulated is we looked at what are the processes in weight management that are interesting to us, because we don't want to think about weight management only as fat burning or thermogenesis. There's so many more things that play a role in the genetic impact on weight management that I try to think about, well, what are those processes and what are the genes in those processes? So you can see in the report, we look at things like absorption and metabolism. So how do we absorb nutrients or macronutrients? The second one you can see is carbohydrate responsiveness. So some of us, we know we crave sugar, we like chocoholics, we really battle around carbs. Others, it's not that hard. You'll see some genes under regulation of feeding behavior and energy intake. And so you can see we've broken down the report. And this is what differentiates this particular test from most of the genetic tests in the marketplace, is that DNA diet really comes at it from all the processes that contribute to weight, not just, adipogenesis, thermogenesis. Okay, so let me tell you what I found in yours. So even though, if you can just go to the top, let's start at the top. Even though it looks like the top of the panel is really loaded, it's not that powerful. Remembering that I see hundreds of these, so I kind of have a sense of when a test is really impactful and sometimes when it's not. So one of the genes that's a little bit of interest to us is the top one, FABP2. This is a fatty acid binding protein 2 gene, and it's about fat absorption in the gut. So interestingly, we all eat a certain amount of fat, but some of us absorb more than others. And so you only got one copy, not two, which is good. But it means that you have a propensity to absorb a little bit more fat from your diet than someone who doesn't have the genetic. But ApoA5 also has a little bit issues around fat. ADRB2, you don't want to be on a high fat diet. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, high fat for you. So we know that there's been a recent trend to go low carb, high fat. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, no, not great for you. It certainly doesn't mean you have to be on a low fat diet, but I would really, for you, a moderate, healthy fat diet would be optimal. So not high fat, and the moderate fats obviously to be made up of your healthy fats, your monounsaturated fats,
So no ketosis for me.
I would not suggest ketosis for you,
Okay.
and definitely not, I would not, probably for a few reasons, but that we haven't got time to talk about.
It's just so, yeah, look, again, I really appreciate, the opportunity to talk about this because, I drank bulletproof coffee for a few years, and it was a mixed bag. Like sometimes I felt well with it. Like obviously you've got like caffeine going right to the brain. So that's going to feel pretty good. But, it's just interesting to see this because, one of the things that I've always thought and wondered is there a chance that when some people think you should be low carb and some people think you should be this and some people think you should be that everyone's right and they're just giving their own experience of what they found and whoever's got the biggest microphone ends up like sharing it out, right? It's crazy. So like there has to be something like this, right?
Right. So that's the point, is that it's not that ketosis doesn't work. It doesn't work for everyone. It's not that high fat, low carb doesn't work. It works for a bunch of people. But we've seen it here in South Africa that we see a bunch of people who land up gaining weight on high fat, low carb, and that we see a real like mess of their insulin, glucose, and lipids. Other people thrive in it and can run marathons. So it's not that it isn't right. It's just not right for everyone. And that's the only diet that I would say kind of you can be safe with is a Mediterranean diet. That's the only one.
Reasonable.
But for you, I don't think carbs are the issue. I think you could probably do well on low carb from what I'm seeing in the genetics, but I wouldn't go high fat. So if you feel comfortable on a low carb, moderate fat, like kind of a modified Mediterranean with a slightly lower carb. But before we get into that, I just want to bring two genes to your attention. They're lower down on the page. I'm trying to kind of scroll down, but it's your computer. Okay. So you can see there's two genes there, MC4R and TCF7L2. Now, what's interesting about these genes, MC4R is all about regulating energy homeostasis. So it's around the body's always trying to get a balance between how we burn up energy and how we consume energy. And ideally, when our body needs more energy, our appetite will go up and we'll kind of consume more. But if we being very sluggish and we're not getting off the couch, our appetite should go down. So it's kind of a regulation of expenditure and appetite. And MC4R is a very powerful gene. So there is a SNP in MC4R, which which usually manifests in childhood, which is what we call a high penetrance SNP, and that it has a really powerful effect and it doesn't have an influence of diet or lifestyle. That's not what we test in these results. But if you have that SNP, you generally have a very childhood obesity, but I mean real obesity. You can't control appetite. You don't ever feel full. The one we testing here is the same gene. The variant is what we call low penetrance. So by itself, it can't cause obesity, but it certainly interacts with diet and lifestyle. And it's a really interesting one because it definitely impacts our ability to control our homeostasis. So you might find that you don't, and that's, you might have learned to control it over the years and to restrain your eating environment and behavior to control it more. But you might have found that you were younger, that it was, you had a tendency to overeat and didn't experience maybe fullness or satiety in maybe some other kids. Like some kids will have like 3 pieces of pizza and they're like, oh, I'm done. And you're like, oh, I can have a pizza. It's no problem. So MC4R can influence your ability, I hope I'm making a good explanation.
No, I actually totally resonate with that as well. Like, I've had issues like with the weight where it's like I could be, strict on a diet for a certain time, and then suddenly I could eat like 6,000 calories and not even think about it, right? Yeah. Where it's just like go through and I was, big and tall. I was like 6'2" when I was 13. So it's like, oh, he's a growing boy, whatever. And I definitely resonate with that. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, so MC4R, there's a couple of genes that are really well researched. MC4R is one of them. FTO is the other one. You don't have the FTO, but you have the MC4R. And it's funny, like you might, as exactly what you're saying, you've learned to manage it as you've grown into an adult who is surrounded by education and information and understanding. So you probably have had to apply a certain amount of restraint into your eating behavior, but also into your eating environment. So you're not going to go to a buffet every day, because if you go to a buffet every day, that's like a really bad eating environment for you.
Terrible.
And it's better for you. Exactly. So it's better for you to have an environment where you like go to a restaurant, it only has decent portions, it has kind of healthy food, you order, so it's about that ability to moderate the regulation. So that definitely, and TCF7L2 is also about homeostasis, usually a little bit more about insulin and glucose homeostasis, but it also plays a role in regulating intake. And it's also a very well related gene. So there's two there. So out of the whole DNA diet, those are the two that for me are the most meaningful.
Awesome. Yeah, super useful. It's really amazing to hear this, because I know it about myself. Maybe my wife knows it about me, but I'm not sure if anyone else knows it about me. And so just to see that is super interesting. And I'm really glad that we're going through this. So cool. Where are we going next?
Okay. Well, let's go and have a look at your sport. Let's have some fun now, because the sport's always fun. The sport is, what do we want to understand? It's not for elite athletes, although it works beautifully for elite athletes. It's what I always find that it works best for what I call like recreational athletes, or like I call myself like a committed recreational athlete, where I train and I really want to make sure that we all work hard, and we want to make sure that when we spend like an hour a day training, we know what we're doing is the best for us.
Yeah.
And that's
I played a lot of cricket, rugby, field hockey, soccer. I play now, now I live in Venice Beach. I play tennis twice a week, and I play volleyball. So my school was kind of like a sports camp, and I just did sports the whole time. So this has been kind of my life when I was younger.
Okay, great. Well, now I'm going to give you some really interesting info. So there are three things, so this is going to be really fun for you. There are three things that we want to look at. We want to look at what is your injury susceptibility. So we know there are a whole lot of genes around collagen, COL1A1, that have been really well researched, and amazingly the best research in the world comes out of UCT, out of Cape Town University. And they're particularly injuries. So we're talking about collagen injuries. So rotator cuff injury, particularly for swimmers, probably for cricket bowlers, rowers, anything like that. ACL injuries, anything around the knee, and Achilles, especially which we see in obviously runners. So some people just have a really high susceptibility to get injuries, and often have had recurring injuries. Then we're going to look at recovery. So the interesting thing about training is some people can like play a 5-hour cricket match or play 2-3 hours of soccer, kind of go home, wake up the next morning, go back to school and play another 2-3 hours of soccer and not miss a beat. There's others of us who will run a marathon on Sunday and will take us a week to recover before we can start running again. So different people have the ability to recover from a training from others. And obviously, if you train against your recovery, so if I run a marathon on Sunday and I start running again on Wednesday, likelihood is I haven't recovered, so my performance will be really poor, but I'm obviously putting myself into a metabolic stress and also injury susceptibility. And the third thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at the idea of power versus endurance. So we all have a potential, I call it like a exercise potential of where do we do best. It's not that we can't do anything, it's what can we do best. So if you're going to spend a couple of hours training, where should you really put your efforts in? Because you get the greatest enjoyment and the greatest pleasure when you do the best in whatever you choose. So whether it's cricket or soccer or running. So we divide it into two categories. The one is power-based. So power is when you utilize short bursts of lots of energy. So it would be sprint athletics, so 100 meter, 200 meter, even 400 meter, where you're almost going anaerobic in your training. It would be anything inside a gym. So it'd be weight training, powerlifting, bodybuilding, would all be power. It would be the difference between someone who was a mountain biker and liked riding directly up a mountain as opposed to doing a 4-day endurance event. And then obviously endurance speaks for itself. It's the running, it's the cycling, it's being able to just kind of keep on going for a really long time. It's long distance swimming, but you're not particularly fast, but you can kind of keep on going. So now we're going to look at your results, right? So if you go, you can see in the results in front of you that there's certain genes that contribute to different areas. But because we don't have a huge amount of time, we're going to kind of cheat and go to the summary. So if you go down the page.
How far down?
I'll just go slowly, keep going. Yeah, stop. Go back up again. You'll see, there you go. So now what we've actually shown is that you've got you had, if you went up and had a look, you had a lot of impact in your collagen genes. So I don't know if you've had any experience of injuries in your sporting career.
Not so much. No, not compared to other people, but I'm not sure if I, put myself in a position where I could get injured a lot. Like, I know when I've seen people get injured in sports, it's not like necessarily like I've never been slid tackled where the guy has, come in me with the cleats halfway up my knee. Right. So I know that that's probably going to injure other people. So, I haven't had that. So I haven't had that same thing, but I haven't had I've never broken a serious bone.
But this is not bone injury, this is collagen. So
the
time we see collagen injuries is when you're running marathons, doing long distance training, long distance swimming. So if you're playing like soccer, or if you're playing, you don't see it so much. It's when there's like a repeated, so if you were like, as I say, becoming a long distance runner or a long distance cyclist or a long distance swimmer, where there's, it sounds like you were more sporty and playing team sports. So you wouldn't get that kind of, and you're playing lots of different sports. But if you were kind of doing the same sport over and over and you were doing hours and hours of it, that's when we see collagen injuries, not necessarily.
Maybe that's one of the reasons, just like naturally, I always sort of I avoided any of those things. I didn't like I was in swimming, I did the short distances. I was never really a sprinter or whatever, but I liked games that would like keep you interested and were sort of short-term high impact, like the long distance running or whatever. I always just felt like totally not into that.
Okay, cool. So let's keep that in mind, what you just said, and we're going to, can you hear me properly?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go down to recovery. There you go. You just went past it. Okay. Fantastic, right? That's exactly the result that you want to have. I know. So this is like, you can go back every day and you can just keep on going. You can play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you need very small recovery bouts to be able to go back and train again and compete again, which is fantastic. I have the complete opposite. So I really need to be careful that I build in enough recovery if I'm going to do like really intense stuff. But with you exactly probably as you did as a kid and as a teenager, you just kept on going back for more.
Super interesting.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you that we're going to finish off with the most interesting thing. Go down. It's quite near the end. These are the details. Okay, let me just show you quickly. Go up a little bit. Little bit here. So what we're interested now in this concept of power and endurance, and what contributes to power and endurance is a whole lot of different variables physiologically. So things, as you can see there, blood flow, respiration, energy, mobilization, fuel metabolism, as well as your muscles. So fast twitch fibers, slow twitch fibers. How efficiently can you use oxygen? How efficiently can you use fuel that's in your glycogen that's in your muscles or fat that's in your adipose tissue? How quickly can the blood bring oxygen? All of these things contribute to whether you're better suited for doing power or doing endurance. Okay, so you can see that those are all the genes. We're not going to look at them individually. We're now going to keep on going to the end until you see two kind of what look like pill capsules. There you go. You just, okay. Right. There's two things we're looking at here. Now it's really interesting, your result, okay? The one on the left is power. So this gives you an indication of how much your genes contributed towards power. And the one on the right gives you an indication towards endurance. There's two ways of interpreting this. The one is we want to compare your endurance versus your power. And I'm going to tell you again, because I've seen so many of these, I know what I normally see, what's like average, and then I'm going to tell you how yours has come out. So the first thing we're noticing is that your endurance is slightly higher than your power, but only marginally, it's not like dramatic. The other thing is if you look at it, there's kind of a shadow halfway up the orange. If you can see that kind of shadow, that shadow is usually indicative of what's the average in the population.
Okay.
So what we're seeing here actually is that, wow, you're actually above average in power and you're very above average in endurance. Now, what we often see in people is we'll see like either power is low, endurance is higher, or endurance is low and power is higher. But what's interesting about your result is your endurance is only marginally higher than your power, and they're both above average. This is like a fantastic result, because what it's kind of saying is, well, you can pretty much do anything, right? So you can play soccer where you have to have short bursts of speed, but you can stay on the field for 90 minutes. You can, and so you could take any sport and kind of interpret it that way. You know, you can play tennis where you have to smack a ball really, really hard, which is a power thing, but you can last for 3-4 hour game.
Yep.
And if you don't have that balance, so let's say you had the power without the endurance, it's unlikely you'd get through a whole soccer game. You'd probably have to be, you know,
kind of weightlifter or something.
Right, exactly. And what we see is people who have power, if they go into a gym and they do weight training, you see an incredible responsiveness in their muscle mass. So their muscles grow very fast in response to the training. If you're an endurance athlete with a low power and you go into the gym and you do that training, you can train as much as you want. Your muscles will literally almost stay the same. And it's the same with the opposite. If you're a power athlete and not an endurance athlete and you go train for a marathon, chances are you're never going to get to that marathon. You'll get to maybe 10Ks, maybe you'll get through but it'll be extremely difficult for you. So what's great about your results is you're actually like, you can do it all. You could actually choose your sport and pretty much do it. So if you really wanted to run a marathon, I mean, you're quite tall for it and you could probably do it. You probably, you know, wouldn't be your favorite thing. With yours, I would say like maybe a 21K or a 10K because you've got enough power to speed, but you've got enough endurance to hang out there. So like a 10K more or less. So it's a really interesting result, yours. Of course, then you want to think, well, if I'm going to do that much, then I just need to watch out for my injuries.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like you've got a perfect balance and you probably chose the perfect sports. But it kind of also makes sense why it was so easy for you to be sporty. You recovered really well and you had enough power and endurance to pretty much do whatever you wanted, whether it's rugby, soccer, cricket.
Super interesting. Yeah, well, thank you. Cool.
Yeah, you got some good genes there. You actually do have some good genes, except for the factor 5. So I just want to finish off just with one last comment.
Okay.
If you, and then I'll do just like a 3-point summary. If you open MedCheck, so pharmacogenetics is exactly what we've been doing, but we're interested in how do you respond to different medication.
Yeah, now, this is super interesting. I love this because we actually have a talk in the summit from Brian Glick on this topic. And this seems just like the most actionable area of genetics where it's like you could see what things aren't going to work for yourself and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, we think this is a no-brainer. We would like every single person who walks through our door to do this. And really, I mean,
I don't take any drugs, just so you know. Yeah. I'm not on any drugs. I've never really taken any drug in my whole life, consistently.
Yeah.
Sounds like I'm about to start taking aspirin though.
Only for traveling and only a very small amount.
Okay.
So I mean, the way this is done is pretty self-explanatory, where they show you, it's genes in 3 categories. It's pain medication, it's psychiatry medication, and cardiovascular medication. And basically, and you'll see under the green, it's like ones that you kind of just need to follow the insert in the packaging. Yellow are those that you should use with caution. You might either be metabolizing too fast or too slow. And then you'll see at the end, the red column are ones that you really need to be careful about.
Interesting.
I've kind of been through your panel, and because you're not a medication, I just wanted to bring up 2 that were of interest because they're common medication.
Okay.
So the one is codeine. And the other one is ibuprofen. Now you can see there on the right, codeine's in the red column. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Now codeine is in a lot of medication that we can easily take. Mm-hmm. And the thing with codeine.
What kind of things?
Well, I don't know what the brand names in the States offhand, but you'll often get pain medication. They'll often put and sometimes they'll put ibuprofen with codeine. So we have a drug here called Miprodol, which is a fantastic drug for pain, but it has codeine in. So codeine, often like post-Caesar, they'll give codeine. It needs to be scripted, but it's not a very high schedule. I can't actually say what it is in the USA, but that's our experience. But it's taken very commonly. And the thing is, codeine gets converted to morphine in the blood. And what happens is we either are slow metabolizers of drugs, and as we take drugs, they stay in our system a really long time, and they're really slow at getting out into our blood or we're very super fast at converting the drug, and it lands up in our blood very quickly. Now, in your case, you're what we call a super fast metabolizer of codeine. So if you take codeine, it converts to morphine really quickly in your blood system. Now, morphine, most people don't even know that codeine converts to morphine. obviously is a really hectic drug. So if you took a high dose of codeine, you might end up with a high dose of morphine, and that has a whole lot of side effects to it. And there's been some terrible case studies of breastfeeding mothers taking a codeine drug post-Caesar, and the codeine converts really highly to morphine, gets into the breast milk, gets into the baby, respiratory distress and everything. So that's why it's almost like you wish that every child had this test the moment they were born, so you knew what the implications were. So you're a hypermetabolizer of codeine. In other words, it converts really quickly. And you, if you needed to take codeine, might need to take a low dose, okay? The second one I want to bring to attention, because we're running out of time, is ibuprofen. So ibuprofen, incredibly common drug. We have it here as Nurofen. We give it to our kids all the time. And it's one of, you can see that it's in your caution column.
Yeah.
It's a non-steroidal inflammatory, but you are a slow metabolizer. So I just want to check my notes here. I did make some notes. You're a poor metabolizer. So it goes into your system. It kind of stays in your blood for in low amounts. So you might find that the dose that you take might not actually work because it's got such a slow metabolism. So I like those because they're two drugs that are very common, and you process them completely differently. And that's why this information is so important, because knowing that, especially when we're giving our kids medication, is so important about the right drug. And it doesn't matter if it's paracetamol, it doesn't matter if it's aspirin, it doesn't matter if it's ibuprofen. Every drug we take is metabolized in a different way between us. And about 50% will be the right dose, and the other people, the 25% above and the 25% below, will either be taking it at high, so it'll have an adverse effect, or too low, and it won't have an impact. Okay, so that's like the pharmacogenomics, like 101, like the speed test. But I know we have minimal time, so I just thought let's just try and pick out a few key things for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the gout issue, I can't, we haven't tested a gene for gout. Gout is usually a combination of processes. And I would like to get back to you on that, but I'll have to do it offline. There's no one gene. I'm concerned about the oxidative stress, the factor 5, so the inflammation from traveling and flying so much would definitely impact your gout. But I'd like to kind of get back to you on that. There isn't one gene I'm going to jump on the gout. And it might be worth talking to someone like Nordic about a functional test that will be able to look at the organic acids, which will give us more information about the gout than the genetics. Okay. Something maybe Anne-Catherine can help us with. Right. Methylation. We want to make sure that you're getting the right amount of B vitamins in. It's not, your profile isn't so big that I'm like jumping onto a supplement bandwagon. Again, we don't have any time, but I would want to check your diet. Make sure that your dietary intake of B vitamins was high enough to cover the basics. If for whatever reason I felt it wasn't, I might look at a multivitamin or a B vitamin that had a real low amount, like 200 micrograms of methylated folate, just to top it off. But if your diet is good enough, we might not even have to go there. And I would look at all your B vitamins, okay?
I actually had a thing recently where I took a high dose of B vitamins and had like a histamine reaction. What would that say to you?
Well, that's called overmethylation. So taking too much methylated vitamins is as dangerous as taking too little. And this is one of the problems we're seeing with a lot of supplement companies, that they're overmethylating. So nowadays, all our B vitamins come in the methylated form, and the methylated form bypasses MTHFR, and yet we're giving really high doses. So we are incredibly conservative. So what happened was we started seeing symptoms of overmethylation that actually mimic the condition. So often when you undermethylate, especially in combination with things like COMT, you land up with anxiety, restfulness, insomnia, like agitation, discomfort, can be headaches. The problem is that overmethylation has the same side effects. So people have been taking these like incredible amounts of methylated B vitamins, thinking like, well, if a little's good, more is. but the side effects can be incredibly strong. Exactly what you call it a histamine reaction, but it is like that because it actually impacts your brain function. So you feel out of sorts. I mean, it's just like a switch being switched on way too high. So we need to be super careful. Yeah, that's exactly. So because you don't have a major methylation problem, you didn't actually need to be taking probably at all. And if you did need, I would probably, and again, I don't know what your dietary intake is. That would be my first priority. If your diet was varied enough in whole grains and legumes and leafy vegetables, we probably got it covered. If not, I would still only use the lowest amount for you of a methylated vitamin. So we would like, in my clinic, we never go over like 400 micrograms of a methylated B vitamin and of methylated folate. And that's only when things are like really looking crappy, right? Which is not yours.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm really get hysterical about is overmethylation. We kind of went from not paying attention to methylation to like becoming a whole big supplement journey. So there's a real big issue. I'm sure Cara Fitzgerald's going to deal with that exact issue in her. We agree on that. We really agree. So methylation, again, just getting the basics right. Your detox is great. Your inflammation is great. Oxidative stress, we need to keep an eye on. It could definitely contribute to the gout. The traveling does not help at all with in fact, the traveling doesn't help with anything, but particularly the oxidative stress.
Yep.
And which obviously is in a loop with inflammation. We want to make sure that your diet has got everything loaded in it to combat oxidative stress. And that doesn't mean taking antioxidants at all. Exercise is one of the best things for managing oxidative stress and inflammation, if taken in the right doses, obviously. But also, obviously, looking at all our fantastic foods that can kind of manage oxidative stress. So we would want to check that in a consultation. Vitamin D, you're going to get your level checked. Okay, you may or may not need supplementation there. Diet, we've spoken about the kind of restraint and this kind of conscious space that you need to be in to be able to manage your environment, your food environment, and your ability to manage your satiety and appetite around that. It's nice when we can blame our genes, but actually in this case, it's really true. And that's the MC4R. The Alzheimer's, we've kind of put to bed the E34, which is great. Yeah, I think that pretty much and the factor 5, obviously, chat to an MD, chat to a GP, and next time you step on an airplane, kind of have all your bits and pieces all ready to go. No traveling without socks.
Got it.
Walking up and down the airplane.
Wow, that's good timing. Well, look, Doc, I really want to appreciate you for taking the time to do this. I came up with this idea. I just thought, why don't I just do it and just see what happens? I didn't know any of this information. I hadn't seen it before. I'm very, very pleasantly surprised with our experience and with going through this process, because I did realize that there are some things in here that are exactly about me. And it makes me even more excited to do the Genetic Summit. You know, one of the things that you said is what if everyone had this information at birth? And that's not been an option until pretty much right now, because it was so expensive. Yeah. And I really do feel that, you know, people understanding more about themselves surely has to be, you know, part of this evolution of medicine, getting to a point where people know themselves well enough to be able to take care of themselves. And this has proved to me actually that we're on the right track. Obviously, as time goes forward and we learn more about things and more research comes out, I think it's going to be exciting. But, you know, thank you for taking the time, and I really appreciate not only the information, but also the context of the information, because one of the things that we really want from this summit is to help people to realize the context in which these individual information should live. And I think you did an amazing job of doing that too. So if you're interested in getting this same test and getting interpreted, you can go to goevomed.com/DNA Life. That is one of our sponsors for the summit. You can see they've got some cool profiles. I also did my 23andMe recently, and this is a very different animal. You know, very useful information. I will be sharing some of that information in another podcast coming up soon, another session. But Doc, if doctors who are listening to this are interested in training with you, where's the best place for them to go online?
2 training programs, manukascience.co.za and ctgeducation.com. We have a long and advanced course to become a nutrigenomics practitioner. Really kind of premium level. And then we have a 4-module shorter course, c2geducation.com, for kind of just really getting involved in it and trying to get some of this knowledge, because it's all about clinical usefulness. It's all about translational nutrigenomics. Results without translation are not helpful to anyone.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. Check out goevomed.com/DNA Live to get your test done. Dr. Yael Joffe, she is the keynote on the day 4 of the summit, the Nutrigenomics Day. There's a bunch of great speakers on that same day. Make sure to register at geneticssummit.com. You can register. You're going to get a lot of great gifts. You're going to hear a lot of great stuff. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, James. Bye-bye.